Let's put into the live stream. Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the Baal Sham's Matan Torah, with commentary by Rabbi Abraham Mordechai Gottlieb. We are in the middle of revealing a handbreadth and concealing two. We are on the third portion of the three parameters of concealment in Kabbalah, which reads, a divine secret for those in awe of God, in the middle of page 47 of Giving. The Baal Shalom begins. This means that the secrets of the Torah are made clear only for those who have awe of His name and guard His honor with all their soul and might, so they should never give rise to any profanation of God's name. This is the third category of the concealment of Kabbalah, and it is the most serious form of concealment for the reason that many have fallen as a result of such revelations. Those who rely on vows and amulets come from this category, as well as those who employ practical Kabbalah, thereby trapping souls with their craftiness. There are all kinds of mystics who use dried up teachings, that came from unworthy disciples of Kabbalah masters, and derive from them physical benefit for themselves or others. And the world has suffered and continues to suffer greatly from their teachings. The Rabbi Shlita says on the spot, Baal Shalom's unwavering requirement is that the secret of God will be shown only to those who have awe of Him. That is, the Holy One, blessed be He, is dear to them. And they would never want His honor to be profaned by passing this secret to those who want to get physical benefits, such as money and power and ecstasies, from the divine wisdom. Since drops of wisdom do sometimes get to people still enslaved by selfish desires, their egoism, these people use what they learn to make a pretense of being Kabbalistic masters. They claim to know how to use the holy names of God as taught in practical Kabbalah for the purpose of physical healing or to create supernatural phenomena. All of this is a profanation of God. For the divine wisdom is intended for those who want to perfect themselves, to abandon self-love by means of the divine light. All their interest is to get to a state where they're serving the Creator in order to please Him. But these other individuals are only interested in themselves. They use the divine light for the opposite of its intended purpose. One must be careful of such people, and Baal Sulam expressed disapproval even if they were using practical Kabbalah for worthwhile matters. How does the above fit in with the fact that Rabbi Chaim Vital and other greats of Israel publicized the different names of God that could be used to help with all kinds of practical matters? Apparently, they believed that only people at the level of the palace of the king, Heichal HaMelech, a high level of closeness to God, would be able to really use this. For other people, the names would not work, and so they would not find any benefit in them. And people in the Heichal HaMelech, the palace of the king, would use the names properly, only in accordance with the will of God. Baal Shalom continues, know that the essential root of concealment of Kabbalah from its very beginning was completely on account of this third category alone. Out of this concern, the sages took strict precautions in examining prospective pupils. As the Talmud states in Masechet Chagiga 13a, quote, only to a head of court is transmitted an outline of the secrets of the Torah. and only if his heart trembles with concern. Similarly, quote, we do not expound the matter of creation to two students, and the matter of the chariot, not even to one. There are many similar statements, and all of this awe is based on what is explained above. For this reason, few are the exceptional people who have merited this wisdom, and even those who have met all the myriad criteria remain sworn with strict and awesome vows not to reveal anything at all of the three above categories. See regarding this in the introduction by Rabbi Moshe Botril to Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, adds Baal Sulam. Not familiar with such introduction, nor was I able to find it, but alas, you may look for it. Now, do not misunderstand my division of three categories regarding the concealing of the Kabbalah. I definitely do not mean that the wisdom of truth is itself divided into three categories. My intention is that every detail in the vast realm of Kabbalah, even the smallest word, is subject to these three categories of restriction. For these are simply three styles of explanation that always apply to this wisdom. Understand this, says the Rebbe Shita on the spot. It works out that, corresponding to the three forms of concealment of wisdom that are due to the three problems that Baal Sulam listed, there are three manners of clarification for every subject in wisdom. Therefore, if you do not stick to a certain manner of clarification, then you are liable to produce its corresponding problem. The author adds to this comment, the translator, saying what is unnecessary can cause separation from God. So one must say only what is necessary for the generation. Saying what is impossible can mislead. So one must say only what is possible by virtue of having received permission from heaven. Again, permission is the ability to enclose the matters. If one has the ability, as all of our abilities are given from heaven, so if one has the ability to provide such teachings and such wisdom in an understandable and clothed manner, then that by definition is permission, so to speak. Of course, all those who had permission were still granted that in some lofty way by their spiritual masters, as it's all a part of the Masorah, the tradition. Again, the translator adds, saying what is unnecessary can cause separation from God, so one must say only what is necessary for that generation. Saying what is impossible can mislead, so one must say only what is possible by virtue of having received permission from heaven. Saying secrets intended only for those in awe of God can harm the honor of God, because perhaps it might get to someone who doesn't have awe of God. So one must say these secrets in a way that only the God-fearing will understand. The Baal Sulam continues, however, it makes sense to ask at this point, given that the teaching of Kabbalah has been so seriously restricted by virtue of the above criteria, how can it be that thousands of books have been published on it? The answer is that there is a distinction between the first two categories of concealment and the last one. The main weight of the task of concealment falls only on the last category for the reason explained above, being those in awe of God. However, the prohibition regarding the first two categories is not fixed. It's flexible depending on the generation. He continues, for example, something which is considered unnecessary may, as a result of changing conditions, become necessary. Similarly, something which is considered impossible may become possible for one of two reasons. Either because the generation has progressed in its development, or because the granting of permission from heaven, as happened in the case of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Arizal, and has happened to a lesser degree in the case of those who preceded them. It is for these reasons that all the authentic books on wisdom that have been written were produced and came to be revealed. The Rebbe Shita says, the issue of necessary or not necessary is of course relative to souls. Therefore it can happen that wisdom becomes necessary due to the state of the generation that is in need of a certain illumination from the wisdom of Kabbalah for the purpose of serving God or for its spiritual development. Also, the impossible can become possible due to the development of the generation. That is, things that were impossible to reveal in previous generations may need to be revealed in later generations now that they've developed the ability to assimilate such ideas. So it's interesting to contemplate the experience of the Baal Sulam when he first came to Eretz Yisrael. The two things that he was most excited about, from what I've heard and read, was getting involved in speaking to the kibbutzim and actually going there and seeing what those societies and communities looked like. The early socialists and communities of Israel. And he also wanted to meet the Kabbalists of Jerusalem, who were of the Sephardic tradition, of the Beit El, Beit Midrash, and tradition, Sora, coming from the Rashash. It was considered one of the four rivers stemming from the Arizal, the others being the Ramchal, the Baal Shem Tov, and the Vilna Gaon. His experience was a very bitter one, because being someone who had already corrected his own soul at the age of 24, and having full attainment of wisdom, I mean, having the whole gamut at his disposal, and having to figure out how to accord his life in order to make the commentaries that he desired to manifest. So in contrast to knowing how to apply the teachings into avodat Hashem, into inner work, let alone the actual details of the mechanics of the Kabbalistic systems. When he met these Kabbalists of Jerusalem, he met individuals who were regarded as some of the greatest of the generation, pious individuals, and they were under the impression that the book of the Zohar was a book for angels, and therefore not necessarily meant for humans to understand. Something of great holiness, of course, something that we can even remember by heart in terms of the actual Aramaic, and read it and say it off. And just reading it, even scanning the words with our eyes, all of this positively affects our soul. That is true, actually, based on our understanding. But to actually dive in and understand it and apply it practically to our lives is, I would go on a limb based on the Rebbe Shita's comment on this exact idea, probably incomprehensibly greater than scanning a page. Makes sense. It's logical. So he was seemingly experiencing a holy fury because he felt the Shekhinah, the divine presence in exile, by coming to this community and seeing the absolute disconnection from the practicality of the learning and the actual lack of understanding of the learning. Complete lack thereof, seemingly. Perhaps there was understanding. Who knows? We weren't there. At least not in this lifetime. Anyways, this is all meaning to describe that perhaps it's just a matter of a shift of generational needs. That those Kabbalists, it was unnecessary for them to know the details. It was unnecessary for them to apply practically in their lives until the time the Baal Shem came and wrote and revealed the matters for everyone. Of course, he deemed it necessary, that switch to be necessary. Those individuals just having yet to be exposed, that was their involvement. That's what they understood. That's what they gave over. That was their tradition, because they were coming from a tradition where that revelation was unnecessary for X amount of years. The Rebbe Shita continues in his comment. Giving permission from heaven also is related to the need of individual souls. But Bala Sulam distinguishes this from the development of the generation. This is because a Kabbalistic sage may receive permission from heaven to reveal sublime matters, even when it is not fitting for the people of that generation. But it is needed for people in a period that is several generations after the life of the sage. The primary cause for the delay in receiving revelation is that the generation requires a stretch of time to allow the unfolding of succeeding states in the process of their spiritual development. This depending on the extent they feel afflicted and the conclusions they draw from their afflictions. The upshot of all this is that the switching of the unnecessary to be necessary and of the impossible to be possible is only for the benefit of the souls in their development. Perhaps what's hinted to here in the afflictions, as far as what we can apply to in recent times, was to our great sorrow and pain would be the Holocaust. You have a enormous chunk of Jews and other nations as well being decimated to dust, literally. And those who survived and finally made it out, you can imagine the hope. After such a great darkness, you would think, Mashiach is coming tomorrow. But he didn't come. To be fair, years came by and the state of Israel was established and was seemingly a succession of the manifestation of light and contrast to that darkness. But the Baal Sulam says at the end of the introduction to the Zohar, quoting the Tikkuni Zohar, Tikkun Lamed, which is a very well-known Zohar, being that all the darkness in the world, whether wars, diseases, murder, and the like, stems from the core, being the Jewish people's disconnection from the inner Torah. And it goes in to draw the dynamic that the Jewish people are the inner aspect of the world, the nations are the outer aspect. And you can hone in even more, being within the inner aspect, being the Jews, there is again the inner aspect and the outer aspect. Those who are balanced diet, maybe including the hidden and the revealed portions of the Torah, and those who are only focused on the revealed portions. And then it goes in again, meaning the people who are involved in the inner, but those who are involved in the inner application to our inner work, and those who are involved in the inner but look at it from the outside as just a strictly technical learning or the like. And it goes in and in and in. The point is that because we're the nucleus of humanity, and we're supposed to build ourselves to be a nation of priests, Mamlechet Kohanim, and a Goy Kadosh, holy nation, we're supposed to lead by example, by means of the refinement of the wisdom of Kabbalah, in order to relay what is fitting for the nations, in order to help them also reach states of peace and happiness, so that we can all be in this exalted state as a humanity. Of course, each to their own camps, as the Baal Sulam describes. It is a bitter thing to consider, but he was writing this during the times of great darkness. And to match the great darkness that was occurring, he was writing and translating the greatest light, which was the translation of the Sulam. Point being is that it became clearly necessary and possible. But even today, even though we see the flourishing, there's many different paths and camps of even Ashlag learning, but still there's, to a degree, an iron fence in the tzibur, in the Haredi community, and the like. Not in every pocket, but there's still a general challenge and a lack of movement in the actual Torah institutions to integrate more inner matters. Could be that it's not time yet to the point of this comment, being that the Baal Shem Tov's revelations was meant for even more generations ahead. But those who are connecting to this text can see that it's very special, very unique, and very clear. So, Sat Hashem, may we continue to connect to it more and more and spread the word where we can, because it's necessary and it's possible. And B'ezrat Hashem, we will also reach the awe of God. Till next time, all the best.